stand by. We are about to start our presentation at WeWork, and we are on Zoom and Facebook Live right now, and we're going to be talking about tips for effective virtual communication. And so, stand by. We're just about to get started.
And then as soon as that's over, we're gonna talk to our
right. And then, yeah, not on the Facebook Live, but on the Zoom, we will be talking with friends from Pakistan who are going to talk to us about the entrepreneurial culture in Pakistan. So that comes right after this on Zoom, and we'll put the link in the comments for our Facebook Live. If you're following along on Facebook Live and you want to jump into that Zoom, you're going to be able to do that.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's get started. Hey, everybody, this is should
Are we ready?
Should we?
All right. Should you want to introduce, or are you just going to jump in?
Go for it. Jump in.
Okay.
Welcome.
All right, gang. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. This is Coach and Kimberly from Christian Career Leadership, and we are here at the Global Entrepreneurship Week here at WeWork in University Park. And today we're doing a thing called Tips for Effective Virtual Communication in order to bring your virtual communication up maybe just a level or two, maybe way up. We'll see where we're at.
Depends where you're starting.
Yeah. So
Maria invited us to talk about virtual communication because as part of Global Entrepreneurship Week, you might be in Austin and talking with someone from Pakistan or from whatever country. Is a global project. So Spain is coming up this afternoon. We've had conversations last night with China. I was in a conversation with people from Oslo. And so it's been a very, very cool week so far. And we are talking today just a little bit about how can you level up your virtual communication, because being in a virtual sphere is in some ways different than sitting across the table from someone.
Really?
So,
really? That sounds like crazy talk.
Craziness, I know. Ben and I have both spent a lot of time in virtual teams. I started a publishing company, and through that publishing company had people all across the United States as editors, and so all of our work, unless we were at a writing conference, all of our work was online. And Ben actually does online virtual training for IT people in countries all across the globe.
All day long. It's like an 8-hour virtual meeting. Well, it is.
Yeah,
it's an 8-hour virtual meeting all day long, the entire week. Some people are like, oh, that sounds horrible. It's a little more like being a DJ, though, than being on a meeting. It's kind of fun.
Okay, so let's jump in.
All
We're going
right.
to start with the easiest tip. The easiest tip is be clear. Now, most people are not trying, oh no, you guys can't see our slides, but our slides have gone on strike. Okay, so for most people, the goal is not to be muddy in their communication. You're not thinking like, what can I leave out of this email? However, it's important to really answer all the questions in the first communication. Now, if you work in a corporate environment, you know that there's emails that get sent out and they say, I really need you to be at this place today. But maybe they don't tell you what time, or they don't tell you who's going to be there, or what you need to bring, and should you prepare something for that. And so there's a back and forth of, okay, but what time should I go, and what room is that in? And it all happens pretty quickly. Well, in a virtual team, especially across time zones, that doesn't work very well. So if you send an email and it doesn't include all the information, maybe you send that at 3 o'clock, but they're already home for dinner. By the time they read it and write back to you so that you can clarify the detail that you left out, you're asleep. And so it can take days to get back and forth with the information.
That sounds horrible.
It sounds horrible. And you know what? It happens all the time. We have a 6-year-old. He's in first grade. And I don't think I've ever gotten a communication from his school that had every piece of information you need.
That's absolutely true.
It's a good school. It's like highly intelligent people. It's just that we're so rushed and harried that we put everything out there and we just hit send. So what you want to do is, before you hit send, ask yourself the questions you learned in grade school. Who, what, when, how, why. These are the important questions. List them up. Where, I left where out. Put them right next to your laptop or wherever you're writing your communication, so that you can ask yourself before you hit print or before you hit send, have I answered all of the questions? It will save you a lot of time. People will be less frustrated working with you.
Absolutely, yeah. You need to get nerdy with this. I mean, some people are like, oh, really? Come on. I mean, it sounds so like basic, like communication 101. but how oftentimes do we still get stuff every single day that doesn't have this stuff in it?
Right.
You know, it doesn't take very long. Take the extra 30 seconds, my friends. It literally might save you days. So the next little bit here is be ultra specific. So as an IT trainer, I've worked across a lot of different shops in all kinds of different facets. I've worked in military spaces, I've worked in medical spaces, I've worked in government spaces. The banking space is very interesting.
For so many reasons.
For so many reasons. And I can neither deny nor confirm that I actually did training for a bank back around 2003.
You can say you trained a bank.
Okay, I did train a bank.
There might have been a bank that he trained.
Yes. And I may or may not overheard a conversation around a particular section of the company which was trying to put together another piece of their online banking sphere. And they were having some difficulties because they outsourced the entire thing to a shop that was overseas. Now, don't get me wrong, I was aware of this shop. This shop is top notch. But here's the thing. They did a lousy job communicating. Their key to the design of this particular piece of the website was make it look good. Great job, guys.
I mean, when you say make it look good, there's only one possible way that would look.
Right, because the only possible way it could look is that if it was made.
It's just exactly what's in your head. It's just like telepathically.
Right.
Communicated it.
Right, especially if you love the 90s like I do. Of
Really
course.
does. It really does.
You want all your websites to look like they were made in the 90s, right? I mean, that's retro, baby. That's
Especially if you're a bank, then you really want like the
Oh, yeah.
flashing gifs and like the neon colors.
And the weird cat gifts like dancing across. That's awesome, right? No, right? So the project was halted 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. So they took it away from one shop, they gave it to another shop, and again, their communication was terrible.
Didn't fix the actual problem.
Right. And
Because
so,
always assume the bad communication is on the other side, right?
it's always their fault.
Wrong.
Right? And I'm sure there was probably fault on both sides, but they ended up having to they actually hired an entire department's worth of people to build this thing. And so finally got it done. Whereas they could have probably done it right the first time if they had just done a little bit of specificity. So for example, style guides. Right?
Those are important.
Examples about what they maybe like in terms of style. Color scheme. Those kinds of simple, ultra-specific things. You can say, hey, I really like this kind of site. Can you make it look like xyz.com?
And especially if there is a language barrier, it's good to have visual things, especially if you're creating visuals.
Oh, yeah.
That's just good in general, but especially across a language barrier to say, I like this kind of font, I like this kind of design, I like this kind of site. Here's some examples. Can you do something in this vein? They're going to have a very specific picture then.
Right. So really beneficial. All right, so moving along, our next one
is watch out for idioms. Now, as an English teacher, you may or may not know what an idiom is, but it's a phrase that means something in a particular culture where if you translate it, it doesn't mean the same thing. So the words mean a specific thing, but they're not what the words mean. So
I thought the idioms were sharks, because that's what I learned from this slide.
Ben made this great slide. If you can't see it, it says, watch out for idioms, and there's just sharks all over it. It says, idioms are dangerous and menacing. But the reason he picked sharks is because a famous American idiom is to jump the shark. Have you guys heard jump the shark?
Yeah.
So what it's a sign that they've taken a risk that is way too crazy. So it comes from
apex, the zenith. The show cannot recover after
yeah,
it
it's
is
usually for a TV show or a company where they've done a thing that was the wrong thing. So I don't even know what decade it was, but Fonzie in Happy Days, he at one point goes on vacation and water skis over a shark.
It was awesome.
That is where people.
Fonzie jumped the shark.
Yeah.
That's where people felt like Happy Days is done. They've run out of things to do, and now they're doing ridiculous things. So to jump the shark is to do a last-ditch effort, something ridiculous. Okay, so that's just one. Here's some other examples. It's raining cats and dogs. I heard it straight from the horse's mouth, which is about betting when you get back to it. He's going postal. I read a number of articles this week about idioms that people in other countries laugh at us about that, mass shootings are such a thing that we have an idiom in our culture to like go crazy as to go postal, going cold turkey, to hit the books or to hit the sack, which of course had nothing
What did the court book do to you?
nothing to do with hitting. Okay, so these are idioms that they all make sense to us, but they don't necessarily make sense when you're translating into another culture. Now, it works the other way too.
It does work the other way. So we carefully curated a selection for your enjoyment from other countries. All right?
It was hard to pick three.
It was
so
hard.
much fun.
It was hard. So here we go. Here is a German phrase. I only understand the train station. Meaning, I don't understand a thing about what the person is saying.
So when that person is talking but it's not making any sense, you just say, I only understand the train station.
Yeah, that totally makes it up for us. All right, awesome. So the next one, here's one coming out of Sweden. There's no cow on the ice. Meaning there's no need to worry.
So this morning, we're trying to get all the technology to work. Everything is a little bit hazy, and Ben said, there's no cow on the ice.
Yeah,
so like, oh,
that's
okay.
fine. And last but not least, the reigning favorite is pagar a pato, which literally means, this is a Portuguese phrase, by the way, that means pay the doc. To take blame for something you did not do. So this is what normally I do after a presentation doesn't go well.
I'll pay the duck.
I'll pay the doc. It's all good. That's all good. All right, so you get the point, right? Want your idioms be, you want to try to be as clear as possible, want to be intentional about our language. A lot of times when people say things that would make perfect sense to us, it may not translate across the ocean.
And sometimes when someone asks you, like, wait, what is that? What does that phrase mean? You have to really think about how to explain it, because a lot of our idioms, we lose the reason for them. So that's an interesting internet journey too.
I don't know why we say
why do we say jump the shark? Why do we say so it's interesting. Okay, the next tip is to use words to express value. Now, in an office environment, there are a ton of ways that we express value non-verbally and outside of meetings. And so it is the way that you walk past a person in a hall. You know how you walk past when you don't value a person? You're like, I do not see that you exist here, right? And so when you value a person, you make eye contact and you smile at them. If you're Ben, you do finger guns, and then they think you're disingenuous. But we have battle.
Actually, they just think it's me.
Yeah, that's true. If you know Ben, you're like, oh yeah, whatever.
Finger guns.
So, at any rate, but when you make eye contact and you smile, people feel like you see them and they feel valued. But in a virtual world, you don't have that kind of interaction. When you are in a conference room with 8 people and one person's really kind of laying it on another person, and maybe things are getting a little bit hostile, you can look at the person that feels maybe a little attacked, and you can, like, with your face say, like, I'm on your side, this sucks. But you can't do that if you're on a phone call, right? And so there's all these ways that we take for granted that we express value for people that we aren't able to really do in a virtual environment. And so what that means is that you have to really think about how do you express value for your team. And you're probably going to have to use words. So that's right.
Words?
What? That's writing the email after the meeting. How do you feel like that went? I really felt for you in that conversation. I would have felt frustrated. Or how is your family doing? Having a little bit of conversation before you get into a meeting is helpful to actually learn a little bit about someone. You can't just, if something is, if people are feeling disconnected, you feel that sense, you can't just be like, hey, let's grab lunch after the meeting, because you're in different states or different countries. Mm-hmm. And so you have to really get intentional about how you're expressing value.
Absolutely. So Kimberly actually we actually did a publishing company we actually owned and started a whole 9 yards, and Kimberly had a staff of people literally across the nation.
Yeah. Ben said, let's just start a publishing company. It'll be easy.
It'll be a piece of cake, right? What could go wrong?
We did a year, we had 30 people on staff, and only like 3 of them lived in our state. And so we did everything in virtual meetings, and it was a labor of love. People didn't get paid if they got anything. It was not very much. And so the currency there was that they felt really connected, and they felt like they were part of something that was important. And so when I stepped down from my role as the editor-in-chief of our literary journal, I chose a person who I thought would be just extraordinary. And it was because he was profoundly good at his craft. He was such a good writer. And so I thought, he's going to take this literary journal to the next level. And in some ways, around craft, he totally did. But the thing that was a struggle was that he was a really great writer, but he didn't have like a great sense for peopling. And so within the next year, about half of the editors that had worked with us since the beginning stepped down because they felt like this is a person that doesn't value me. And so then as we were talking and kind of post-morteming some of these exits, one of the things he said is, well, of course I value them. They should know I value them. Well, guess what? They don't know. You know, if you get on a call and you say, do this, do this, do this, why haven't you done this? And then you get off the call, there's not any positive exchanges happening. And so you need to be having those expressions of value, and then your whole team will work better.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up, be interesting. Or
obviously the easiest one. Just be interesting.
Just be interesting. That's all you need. Or at least not boring, right?
Now, I will tell you that Ben has created a whole career in IT around this. Because IT is not known for being like the most snazzy and high energy of fields. And so
it's like watching paint dry most of the time.
He teaches people around high level computer, server, cloud kind of stuff. But he's really well known because people don't want to fall out of their chair because they're bored.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you do that. How do you be interesting?
Well, I like to say that Kimberly was a classically trained teacher, and I'm a classically trained clown. Which, by the way, is completely true. I actually was trained by a Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey veteran a long time ago in the galaxy far, far away. It's true. Right? It's true.
Back when clowns were not only known for being serial killers, and terrifying
and scary. I was a just say no to drugs clown. So it was awesome. And yeah, good times, Jared and all that, man. It's close to my heart. And so that kind of unleashed me a little bit, I think, and also as I grew up in a little bit of church in the middle of nowhere, where I was kept pushed up front of the church all the time to lead song service or whatever. And
Ben's dad has a theory about church, and it is, if you can hear the person next to you, you're not singing loud enough.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And so all of that to say, you don't have to be a clown, you don't have to be a radio DJ per se, but at least try to be happy to be alive. On the call. Sound like you're interested in being something other than sad and boring and mad at the universe. Now, I understand sometimes, hey, you know what, things are not going well, and you're
might be sad and
human. You're allowed to be human, but at the same time, understand that everyone else on the call is human too, and you know what, if you can bring just a little bit of light to them, bring just a little bit of a laughter. I like to post these funny memes in my class. My students love it, because it's like, here's a dog with a funny graphic, or funny saying.
I didn't let him use any memes because they don't necessarily translate globally.
Right, they're weird memes.
But we usually have them in our slide deck. We have memes.
But students around the world have spent literally dozens of hours with me on video on these virtual trainings. And they remember not always, everything that we talk about, but they remember how they felt. And when they remember how they feel and associate that with your communication, they're going to be happier to come back to another meeting with you.
Yes. Here's the thing. In a physical office, when you're invited to a meeting that is horrible, you stay somewhat engaged because people can see you, right? So you're sitting around the conference table and you are wanting to cry because your meeting is so boring and the PowerPoint slides are so ridiculously sad, but you have to be there because your boss is watching your response to things. When you log on to a conference call or to a virtual call, even if there's video, and it can be like, oh, my video's not working, and then do email, or you can mute yourself, and then the whole time you can be just checking Facebook and like, yeah. So you really have to up your game in making it relevant and interesting. And one of the ways you can do that is also with some good visuals like he was talking about. Even if you just pop in, Ben has a whole library of internet weird. So when he feels his class like kind of going downhill, he'll play some weird thing from the internet for 30 seconds, kind of pull people back in.
And everyone's happy again.
Every once in a while someone complains about it, like he's not taking this seriously, and he's like, well,
Well, still fun.
you know what? You don't learn very well when you're bored to tears.
That's true. That's true.
All right. So the last tip is to create a feedback loop. This is incredibly important in a virtual team because handling conflict and giving ideas that are outside of what is being presented, for example, is easier in person because you can kind of poke your head in your boss's office and say, hey, do you have a second? I'd like to talk to you about the way that conversation went. And they can say, yeah, come on in. And there's not like a big buildup of tension. So you're just looking for your window to catch someone by the water cooler or to just say like, hey, can we grab lunch? And then say, I didn't like how that meeting went, or I think we're on the wrong path with this rollout of this program. I'd like to talk to you about where I see there being some problems. A lot of people, if you're on a call with like say 8 people or around a conference table, they won't bring up the thing that they think is going to cause friction. They'll wait until after the meeting. In a virtual team, you often don't have it after the meeting. And so like, let's say that something, I worked for a nonprofit that has global conversations and people are all over, nobody's in the same city. And so if I felt frustrated about the way something was happening, then I would have to send an email and say, hey, can we have a conversation about how that meeting went? Can we schedule something? And then 90% of the time, the person's gonna say, oh yeah, sure, what do you want to talk about? Now you're having this like kind of half conversation, and then it's literally like, I don't really want to get into it right now. And then by the time it's like 3 days later and you're having your meeting, they're all riled up, and so you lose that ability to just organically handle conflict. And so what you have to do as a leader of a virtual team is create organic spaces for people to say the thing that they might be holding back. Because your team will always be more intelligent if people are saying what they are holding back, right? So you are asking questions like, how do you feel like that meeting went? How did you feel in that exchange with so-and-so? Is there something that you're holding back? What's your last 10%? Do you think that we're on the right track with this? And then leave some silent space because you're creating an organic moment. They're not prepared for it. And then they might say, well, actually, since you're asking me, I think we might be on the wrong path. And now I'm going to tell you something incredibly intelligent that you would have never known. And so you as a leader of a virtual team, or as like even just a good colleague on a virtual team, if you can create space with good questions, then people will give you the information that you need.
Yeah, sure enough. And that's so what Kimberly said, I think too, is make sure you leave a silent space.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to fill it. I know it's going to be a little awkward, but you know what? Sometimes the most awkward spaces are also the most sacred.
It's true.
Let people have the space, let there be awkwardness, and that information, that feeling, whatever it is that they're struggling with, all of a sudden comes out, and then magic can happen out of those moments.
Yeah, we've all had bosses and colleagues who, when they ask us how we feel like something went, there's a clear answer that is expected. And sometimes they answer it for you. How do you think that went? Good? so anyway, don't be that boss. Be the boss that asks a question and actually has an open space for the answer. People can tell just in the way that you ask the question.
All right, gang. Well, those are our tips. So thanks for hanging out with us. We are Christian Entrepreneurship. Again, you can email us and text us.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's see you guys. Thank you. Let's see if we can switch over
We're
to.
going to switch over to Pakistan now.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the entrepreneurial environment in Pakistan. Okay, let's turn it off.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, gang.